Hi everybody, thanks for watching. Today I'm going to make that controversial video I've been putting off for a while here. It's about SARS-CoV-3, COVID-19 as you know it. And I want to start off by saying that the United States of America is a signatory to the Geneva Conventions. One of those conventions is, it talks about in there gain of function to viruses and a bunch of other things, which are expressly forbidden under the Geneva Convention. The other thing I want to talk about is for the last 5 years they've been checking bats and every other animal in China and a lot of them around the world actually through the World Health Organization. And no SARS-CoV-3, COVID-19 has been detected in any animal other than Homo sapiens, humans. So we need to understand these facts right from the beginning. And another fact is, we now know that the National Institutes of Health, and to a certain degree the CDC, but mostly NIH, was funding viral gain of function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China, which is illegal. Completely illegal. You can't do that. And the Chinese couldn't run a lab doing it either. So what does it mean? It means both China and the United States of America violated the Geneva Conventions and did it anyway. Now, will somebody be held accountable? I don't know. I doubt it. It don't look like the Trump administration is going after those people who funded that research. That's number one. Number two, in the spring of 21, the mask experts who make the masks for the Department of Defense and other people, to filter out viruses, bacterial agents, nerve gas, and all this stuff that's on the nano level, testified before Congress and said that the cloth and paper mask, even that N95, was totally ineffective against anything at the nano level. Okay? They weren't designed to do that. They're not a sealed mask. They were never designed to be anything but a bacterial mask. And the cloth ones weren't even that. And the lying didn't stop. Also, they testified before Congress that in an indoor environment, like a school building, the mask didn't work, and there's no difference between 6 foot and 60 foot in an indoor environment. That means social distancing was another non-scientific lie. We got into a bunch of this in COVID. These masks will filter at the nano level. No, they won't. They just go right through, or they go on the sides because they're not a sealed mask. They're not doing anything. And the social distancing was another flat out lie This wasn't like you had a cold and were blowing stuff when you coughed all over, which you did. But that's not how COVID-19 was moved. It was moved through the air and the nanoparticles that you breathed in. It attacked the respiratory system when you breathed it in. Okay? But to this day, the lies that were told during COVID-19 have never been corrected. Nobody's came out and said all this stuff from the NIH or the CDC or the World Health Organization, which we never had any business belonging to the World Health Organization anyway. It can't do anything. It didn't do anything. To this day, it hasn't come out and said, oh yeah, it came out of the Wuhan lab and they had infections with old people dying back in the middle of September of 2019. The hospitals in that area around Wuhan were overwhelmed by the middle of September of 2019 with COVID-19 cases. And they knew it. Left the country open and just let people leave and come and go, just like nothing was wrong, until March of 20, basically. By then it was way too late. There was no sense in doing anything because guess what? It already got out of the country and around the world. So, except for Rand Paul, as far as I know, nobody in Washington's had the guts enough to come up, stand up, and tell the truth. They just haven't. They haven't wanted to say anything. The other thing, if you were a young person, a child, or even a young adult, you weren't going to die from COVID-19 unless you had something else wrong with you. You were a diabetic, or you had a heart condition, or you had kidney disease, or liver disease, or there's actually a bunch of things you could have had that would have made you a lot more susceptible to COVID-19. Okay? They call them comorbidities. Anything that was already affecting your immune system, basically, like old age, like me, then yeah, you were going to be susceptible to COVID-19. Now, I got to tell you, truth in advertisement, when they came out and said what the vaccine was, and I went and read about it, there was no way I was going to ever take a shot for COVID-19. Not and change every cell, every gene cell in my body. That was not going to happen. And it didn't. And besides that, we now know through scientific data that's out in other countries, because our country is not doing their job. The CDC is not doing their job. Not even close. But in a lot of countries in the world, like Japan, like South Korea, like Australia, like Italy, to some degree Spain, there's a lot of countries out there who are now got scientific studies showing the effects of what taking the COVID-19 vaccines have caused, like excess deaths. And what a lot of people, I think, the evidence is starting to show that they called long COVID may have actually been the results of taking the vaccine. And they may, most likely, it looks like they may be with you for life. Besides the number of people around the world who took the injection and immediately got hurt, those numbers are, the deaths and injuries from taking the vaccine are much, much higher than what you're being led to believe through the VERS program down at the CDC. Because for some reason, our VERS system doesn't show the damage done by the vaccine in this country like other countries have well documented. A bunch of the Scandinavian countries they stopped that vaccine years ago when the evidence started to roll in. Americans just been ignorant, okay, because they weren't informed. But all along the way, if you ever wondered how the Nazis were able to convince a lot of their population that killing the Jews was okay, well, it's the same way that wearing masks, taking untested drugs, and all this other stuff just happened, and it was brainwashing, okay? It was absolute brainwashing. And people who had the knowledge, like I learned about the smallness things, like the you couldn't see way back in 7th grade science class, at a small country school in rural Michigan. And you got these people who aren't so smart, were educated, that forgot, I guess, or were never taught in some instances, I don't know, how small something is. Some of these people are running around today and still don't understand. They don't understand how small something on the nano level is. You can't see it, it's so small. Don't know why this is hard to understand. Can't believe there's an issue, but there is. And a bunch of these people are still believing the stuff that they were told under the COVID-19 emergency, I guess you'd call it. The other thing is, the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines have never made it to this day through the FDA approval program. It's not been done. The testing's not ever been completed. This is still emergency use stuff, and they're still giving it to people regardless of the scientific data associated with it. And giving that to children that have basically a 0% chance or almost a 0% chance of dying is totally ludicrous. Changing every cell in their body to something else, God knows who knows what. Because now we've learned that a bunch of these vaccines were contaminated with other people's DNA and maybe multiple people's DNA. The process for making it was a joke, apparently. Now, I know a lot of you aren't wanting to hear this, but those are the facts. They're not hyperbole. Those are the facts. Now, the people that didn't come out and say that these people were committing felonies, that's a whole nother issue. That's another video. When you can break federal law, which the Geneva Conventions are now, since they were an approved treaty and approved by the Senate, signed by the President, that's a law. Okay? It's a law of the land, just like any other federal law. I am sorry if some of you are offended by what I just said, but people need to be going to prison, and those people who lied spouting science need to be put in their place and maybe go to prison too, depending on their position and what they said. All right, I could keep talking about this for hours. I'm not going to. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.